Uber meets reality when it comes to pricing, and customers find out what Uber really will cost if they become the dominant force. Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and let's make this video part of the Gig is Up series. This is a series that I'm kind of reserving for the Uber and DoorDash stories, where basically reality is coming down hard on all of these companies because they thought it was the greatest thing in the world. They thought that this is the future, and I was always skeptical. I told people, be careful, be absolutely careful. Because once you find out what these things really cost, you are going to be sticker shocked. And sure enough, I found someone who was extremely sticker shocked when they shared on their Instagram what their ride from LAX to their home in Roland Heights cost. Now, they made it a point to mention that, they've taken this trip before, and it used to be $50. And that's one of the reasons why they were happy to take Uber over cabs. And they got this one done and they realized, oh my gosh, $150. That's enough money to rent a car for a few days, and we could have driven ourselves. And of course, if you got a taxi, this is pretty much what it would have cost as well. And people look at that like, what on earth? How on earth could it cost this? And the answer is because this is what your trip is worth. If you are going to be giving out rides and you are going to be using gas and maintenance and things like that, this is what a trip costs. Of course, it's going to be double screwed, as we'll discuss in a minute, but it's prompted the media to basically take a look and realize that, the free lunch is over, with this very good article from The Atlantic by Derek Thompson, The End of the Millennium Lifestyle Subsidy. So let's look at this maybe not real quick. This might be a little longer than usual, but we'll see. Several weeks ago, I needed a ride home after some late night drinks about 2 miles from my place in Washington, D.C. I pulled up the Uber app and entered my address. When the price on the screen popped up, I'd assumed I'd entered the wrong street and perhaps the wrong state. I carefully retyped, but the same price appeared on the screen. $50. That's outrageous, I thought. $50 for a 10-minute ride? I'm going to just jump in for a second. I gave an $83 ride for a 10-minute ride once upon a time from Disneyland to a hotel that was less than 2 miles down the road when the surge was 9.8 on New Year's Eve. I think this was back in 2015 or something like that. So, yeah. It can be that much, so clearly there's a big surge going on at that point. Then I kept thinking, aren't gas prices and inflation near half-century highs? Isn't the labor market so tight that low-paid workers are switching jobs at historic rates? Isn't nominal wage growth rising fastest for the kind of workers most likely to drive for Uber? Yes, yes, and yes. But somehow, beyond rising energy and labor costs, led to that startling price tag. With markets falling and interest rates rising, startups and money-losing tech companies are changing the way they do business. In a recent letter to employees, Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi said the firm needs to, quote, make sure our unit economics work before we go big. That he did. I've got a video about that you can watch as well, part of this series. That's chief executive speak for, we gave Derek a nice discount for a while, but the party's over, and now it costs $50 for him to get home. In all fairness, if you've been drinking, that is still better for everyone to pay that $50 than to get a DUI or potentially kill someone. So I want to make that abundantly clear. For the past decade, people like me, youngish, urbanish, professionalish, got a sweetheart deal from Uber, the Uber for X clones, and that whole mosaic of urban amenities in travel, delivery, food, and retail that vaguely pretended to be tech companies. Almost each time you or I ordered a pizza or hailed a taxi, the company behind that app lost money. In effect, These startups backed by venture capital were paying us, the consumers, to buy their products. It was as if Silicon Valley had made a secret pact to subsidize the lifestyles of urban millennials. As I pointed out 3 years ago, if you woke up on a Casper mattress, worked out with a Peloton, Ubered to a WeWork, ordered on DoorDash for lunch, took a lift home, and ordered dinner through Postmates, only to realize your partner had already started on a Blue Apron meal, your household had, in one day, and this is really good, interacted with 8 unprofitable companies that collectively lost about $15 billion in 1 year. You interacted in one day with 8 unprofitable companies that collectively lost about $15 billion in 1 year. Let that one sink in. These startups weren't nonprofits, charities, or state-run socialist enterprises. That would probably make sense. Eventually, they had to do a capitalism and turn a profit. But for years, it made a strange kind of sense for them to not be profitable. With interest rates near zero, many investors were eager to put their money into long shot bets. If they could get in on the ground floor of the next Amazon, it would be the 1 in a million bet that covered every other loss. So they encouraged startup founders to spend aggressively, even if that meant losing a ton of money on new consumers to grow their total user base. Consider this simplified example. Let's say that the ingredients, labor, and transportation costs of a pizza delivery in New York City average $20. If a company charges $25 for the average NYC delivery, it will make a profit. But if a startup charges $10 for the same thing, it will lose money but get a lot more pizza orders. More pizza orders means more total customers, which means more overall revenue. It also means, I want to mention, I don't know if he does in a second, it means you have a little bit of a bargaining chip when it comes to what your side of the cost for that delivery is going to be. This arrangement is tailor-made for a low-rate environment in which investors are attracted to long-term growth more than short-term profit. As long as money was cheap and Silicon Valley told itself the next world-conquering consumer tech firm was one funding round away, the best way for a startup to make money from venture capitalists was to lose money acquiring a gazillion customers. But did that work for places like MoviePass? That's my comment because you know I make MoviePass videos on my other channel. Oh, little ad. Subscribe to The Atlantic. I call this arrangement the Millennial Consumer Subsidy. Now, the subsidy is ending. Rising interest rates turned off the spigot for money-losing startups, which, combined with energy inflation and rising wages for low-income workers, has forced Uber, Lyft, and all the rest to make their services more expensive. Meanwhile, global supply chains haven't been able to keep up with domestic consumer demands, which means delivery times for major items like furniture and kitchen equipment have bloomed from 3 to 5 days to sometime between this fall and the heat death of the universe. That means higher prices, higher margins, fewer discounts, and longer wait times for a micro-generation of yuppies used to do low prices and instant deliveries. The yuppies comment was his, not mine. The golden age of boungy, on-demand urban tech discounting has come to a close. I should underscore that the old ways were made possible by an era of lower demand and weaker labor markets, which was not a winning combination for most workers. Many people drove an Uber or delivered Thai food because they didn't have competing job offers that would clearly pay more per week. Today, job openings are historically plentiful and nominal wages are rising fastest for low-income workers. That virtuous adjustment has shown up in higher Uber and DoorDash prices. This isn't the end of the story, and probably not the end of the series, I want to add. With inflation raging, the Federal Reserve will continue to raise interest rates several more times in the next 6 months and could tip the U.S. economy into a recession. If that happens, oil prices will likely fall and rising unemployment could put more Uber drivers back on the road. At that point, ride-sharing prices would fall again. But the heavily discounted prices of the 2010s aren't coming back. The millennial consumer subsidy is over, and for the foreseeable future, metro residents will have to go about living the old-fashioned way by paying what things actually cost. And that's kind of the scary end, and I kind of want to highlight this comment since I still feel to a certain extent bad for drivers. I do think they should get paid more. I've long ago stopped feeling sympathetic for them. I mean, if after all this time you can't see that you need to get out of this business, that's really on you. But look at this. If that happens, oil price would likely fall, and rising unemployment could, let me emphasize it a little more, put more Uber drivers back on the road. At this point, ride-sharing prices would fall again. And, isn't that like just kind of like a frustrating thing, knowing that that's kind of how it works? And that the weird thing is, it doesn't work that way, because Uber Pay has not gone up. The incentives have more or less come to a close since Dara Khosrowshahi announced that they would be. And they're even taking away the fuel surcharge, which is supposed to help the drivers, even though the gas is nowhere near affordable to what it was before. In fact, it's much worse. Which means you take a look at this picture right here, this trip. excuse me. $145.90 plus $15. I don't know if that $15 is the tip. It probably is. I haven't taken an Uber for a very long time, to be honest. But think about it. That's $150, and the driver's not getting much of that. I would venture to guess this driver probably got, with the tip, $50. It'd be interesting to see what this was. And the thing is, yeah, $50 for an hour, that sounds great until you realize, oh yeah, you're driving for an hour. That hour is going to cost you like maybe $20 to $30 in gas, unless you got like a hybrid or an electric. And in this way, Uber is screwing over the drivers and the customers. The customers are now finally having to pay what it's worth. But Uber doesn't have the costs that a taxi industry has. They don't own the cars. They don't own anything except the app. They are literally screwing everyone. And the sad thing is, I think that if the unemployment thing becomes a big thing and people have to go back to Uber because they feel like they must do what they must to survive, and I have made videos about why that is a fallacy, I think what's going to happen is the driver's pay is just going to get cut again. It might only be by a couple pennies, because God knows you can't cut it anymore. But the driver pay will be cut, because once the drivers are desperate, Uber knows that they've got them. Will the prices go down? Probably not. Uber needs to make money. Everyone's in money-making mode right now, where it's like, we're not going to lose anymore. And here's the thing. Unlike most industries that have been raising the prices, like, I just use this example, and I think it's ridiculous. Like, when I see, like, Wizards of the Coast raising the prices of Magic of the Gathering cards, which I don't buy for the record, but when I hear that they're raising it from, like, $4 to $5, it's like, oh, come on. They're trading cards. They're not important to anyone's lives. There's no reason to raise the price other than you can. That's greedflation. But Uber and Lyft, they have literal inflation. The free money has stopped, and they need to actually start making it. And so you're going to see those prices get worse. You're going to see the driver pay get even more worse. Now, an upcoming recession might give Uber a little bit of a boost in drivers. Unfortunately, this is human nature. Most people, especially when they lose their job, even if in many ways they will be spending money to drive for Uber if they go out, most people don't work the spreadsheet. Most people don't really add up the cost to doing this. They just see what's on the sticker value, and they say, well, I'd rather make something than nothing, even though in some weird way, making nothing would be more valuable to you, because you could use that time to look for a job that would pay you better than Uber. The gig is up. It's just a matter of time before this all comes to a crash. Of course, I like to ask your thoughts on this. What do you think? I'd love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.